Hello everyone, welcome to this strategy webinar on how to score a 760 on the GMAT. Before I get started, I would like to know whether you can hear me loud and clear. So I'm bringing up a poll. If you can hear me clearly, I would request you to please mark yes in the yes and no poll. If you can hear me loud and clear, please mark yes. Okay, I can see that most of you can hear me. Some of you are still saying no, so I'll wait for a few more seconds. Keep in mind there might be a lag of 5-10 seconds, but not more than that. Okay, so I think it has stabilized at about 85%. So I'm assuming that most of you can hear me. Those of you cannot, if you're still facing issues, I would request you to, kind of try and relog in or check your audio once. Okay, so let me end the poll. And let's get started, guys. So I'll very quickly introduce myself. And while I'm doing that, I am going to give another poll because I just want to know, at what stage of your prep you are in. So while I'm introducing myself, I would request all of you to, put your responses in the poll that you can see now. So my name is Saqib. I'm going to be a host today. I'm the co-founder of GMAT and GMATWhiz. And I've taken the GMAT myself. I've got a 760 with a perfect Q51 and a V40. I love creating test strategies. I love working on, taking quant sessions also. Some of you might have attended my quant and a few CR sessions also. The purpose of this webinar, by the way, is, to give you two kind of perspective. One is my perspective. I took the GMAT. I've been hearing about the GMAT getting difficult since a long time. So this 760 that you see on the on the screen is a pretty recent one. I just took it last year around July, August, somewhere around that time, and so, the experience is pretty fresh. You will get to know, how difficult or how easy the exam is. And the second thing is, I also want to give you a perspective, from all the experiences, all the strategy that I'm going to talk about, is a lot of it would be from student perspective. A lot of it is also going will be from the perspective of the most important questions, that students usually ask me during the mentorship sessions that we usually provide at GMATWhiz. Okay. The agenda is fairly simple. I'll just talk about, some of the key exam strategies. So when I took the GMAT, what kind of strategies did I use? What do I recommend? How are these strategies important? Then I'm going to talk a bit about the verbal section analysis. How difficult was it? What was the split? What kind of strategy can you use? And this particularly would be important for you because I think most of you know that I'm not per se a verbal expert, right? I am very comfortable with quant. In verbal, I do like CR, I do like RC, but SCR, okay, I can do it, but it's not something that I really love doing, to be very honest. So I think you'll get a good flavor of understanding how do you strategize to get a V40 or V40 plus. Then I'm going to talk about quant section. This is especially important from the perspective of, a lot of students last year, not since last year, I think in the last 2 years have been telling me that quant section has become difficult. I've been getting very difficult questions, or a lot of you come up and ask me, hi, I'm still not being able to do hard questions in 2 minutes. What should I do? So all these questions and how do you create a best strategy to be able to tackle those is definitely going to be discussed out here. And then obviously some common tips and tricks that I'll talk about. And I'll keep some time at the end if you have any Q&A. Keep in mind that if you have any concerns, any doubts while I'm going through it, you can still ask questions. It's not that I'm not going to take any questions in the middle of the webinar. I'll definitely do. So if there's anything you're particularly concerned about or you want me to touch upon, definitely ask those questions. While I'm talking about a strategy, if you have more questions on that, please feel free to ask. I want this to be as interactive session as possible. Okay, I can see most of you, the poll has stabilized, and I do have a very good mix of people. About 25% of you, 20% of you are yet to start the GMAT prep. In fact, I would say 35% of you are been preparing for less than a month. but a good chunk of you, the remaining chunk of you, have more than 2 months of prep under your belt, and about 30% if you in fact are preparing for 4 to 6 months. Okay, so I think it would be pretty relevant for people who have been preparing for more than 2 to 3 months, and those who are preparing for less than a month. I think you can take certain takeaway strategies of how you can prepare for a particular section, especially if either of these two are either verbal or quant as your weak area. Okay. Okay, I can see something on the chat box. I attempted GMAT twice, but due to anxiety, I ruined VS section. Please guide me further. Okay, that's a good query. I know a lot of you students do happen that, you might end up panicking a little bit in the exam, and because of that, the test does get ruined. So the key exam strategy that I'm going to talk about, in fact, does touch upon that. Uh, See, whenever there were three key strategies, when I'm taking the exam, and it's not only about GMAT exam. I've taken aptitude, multiple aptitude tests, GMAT, CAT. Those of you from India, I'm pretty sure you know about these exams. That all of these, and there was so 2 to 3 things which I have definitely, made a point to focus on while taking any test, especially the second one, because anxiety obviously is the number, I would say, apart from right preparation. I would say is the number one problem. If you don't prepare right, nothing can work. But apart from the right preparation, I know a lot of people still mess up the exam. Then I would say the number two, or the biggest concern, is getting multiple thoughts in the exam, that maybe I'm not doing my verbal section well, or do I have enough time in my hand or not? What should I do? If you end up spending 3 to 4 minutes a question, what should I do? Say, for example, in the first quarter, I don't know a question. Will that ruin my whole test? So those are certain things which I'm definitely going to touch upon. But these are three key things which I would say, guys, write it down. Make a mental note of it, whatever is works for you. But if you really want to do well, and if you have a certain score in mind, like when I went to take the test, it was the one thing which I had in mind was, hey, I at least need to target a 40 and I at least need to target a 50. These were two numbers in my mind for quant and verbal and quant respectively. So uh, while taking the test, I had to keep in mind how many questions can I get wrong, what kind of timing that works for me. And obviously, see, I was prepared well. And more for most of the students who end up scoring, let's call 730 plus, knowing most of the concepts and be it verbal or quant is, that's something I'm pretty sure you already know. It's very obvious that if you're not preparing well, nothing's gonna work. But how do you maintain yourself? How do you calm yourself in the exam? I'm sure you must be asking yourself this question. Hey, Saqib, I know I need to maintain my calm. I need to be calm, but how do I do that? So I'll talk about certain, as I said, I'm going to talk about how you can do that. What are the steps that you can take before the exam and during the exam that can definitely help you out? So first of all, let me talk about verbal section. And during that time, I also talk about, again, the anxiety part also. So usually what you'll notice is whenever you take the test, the split of verbal would be something like this. You would get about 13 questions in RC, 13 in SC, and about 9 in CR, roughly. Okay, keep in mind that one or two questions might be, might change. So you might have a split like sometimes a split like this also, or a split like this also for RC, SC, CR. But the main thing that you'll notice is that about 26 to 27 questions kind of fall in this category, roughly in SC and CR, and the remaining 9 to 10 questions are out here. That is what I've observed in most of the ESRs that I've seen, and personally, this was what I got in my test, 14, 13, and 9. Now, based on my observation while taking the test, what I've realized is there were, when you talk about difficult questions, and I saw difficult, I mean really difficult to answer question. My observation was that about out of 36 questions, there would be around, 4 to 6 questions which might seem super difficult. And how do I define super difficult? Let's say, for example, you're doing an SC question. You have read you have read the underlined and non-underlined sentence, and you have no clue, what they are testing, or they're testing an idiom which you have no clue about, or something like that. If you're doing a CR, you have no clue about the stimulus. Okay, you have read the stimulus, but you fail to identify what is the conclusion. You cannot understand what you're trying to strengthen or weaken or evaluate, right? Or maybe you're doing a very dense RC. reading comprehension passage where you're not sure, you're not understanding the meaning, or you're taking about a lot of time to understand it. So that is the way I define the super difficult question, a 750 level question. In my observation, about 4 to 6 kind of fell in that category. Now, personally, in my case, what happened was that I ended up making 8 mistakes. Now, this is important, which I would want you to highlight. I want to make sure that you understand this really well, guys. That I know a lot of people ask me this question: how many mistakes can I make in the test so that I end up with a 40? So I end up with a 30, 42 or a 38 or a 36. Now, it's an adaptive test, so we usually refrain from telling you how many questions you should attempt. But assuming that, historically what we have seen, that if you are able to, space out your mistakes over the, these 36 question, from 1 to 36, if you're making mistakes and sporadically, like in the first 9 questions, let's say for example you made 1 or 2 mistakes, in the next 9 questions, you ended up making another 1 or 2, in the next 9 again maybe another 1, 2. So as long as these are spaced out, uh, usually with 7 to 8 mistakes, you can end up getting a V40. Okay, but keep in mind that if you end up in the first quarter, in the first to 9 questions, you ended up making 6 mistakes. Okay, and then you in the remaining 27 questions, even if you just make 2 mistakes, that's not going to help you get a V40. Keep this in mind, because because if you make 6 mistakes in the first 10 questions, then obviously till the next 10 15 questions, you'll mostly be getting easy and medium questions only. So the opportunity to score high would be very, very low. Okay, so keep in mind, why I'm telling you about this split is something which I'll talk about in the next slide. But what I really want to highlight the fact is that it's not that all the questions in the test are very difficult. Okay, you would have a very good split of easy, medium, and hard questions in the test. So as long as you are very confident that you would be able to get your easy and medium questions correct, uh, you can, and maybe let's say for example this even turns out to be out, if there are 26 questions out here, let's say, and let's assume that even 10 of them are difficult. Even if you have a even if you have a 50% accuracy out here, you can still end up getting a very, very good verbal score in the GMAT, on the GMAT. Okay, so see, understand, the one thing which I would want to say is that identify your strengths. Okay, that is the number one thing which I would want to mention as far as verbal strategy is concerned. What I've I'll give you my example. I'll give you a few more examples of students. Is that having talked to a lot of students, and personally in my case, what I've realized is CR is something which I really love doing. It's purely logical. You don't need to learn a lot of theory. As long as you understand what you need to strengthen, we can evaluate. You would be able to do definitely well in that section. So out of the 8 mistakes, the one mistake which I made was it was just one mistake I made in my critical reasoning section. That's all. As far as reading comprehension is concerned, I ended up making 2, and sentence correction, I think I mentioned the starting only, something which I really don't love doing. So I ended up making 4 mistakes. But for me, two of my sections were pretty clear to me that I knew that I would be able to do well in it. Critical reasoning and reading comprehension was something which I was pretty comfortable with. Okay. And since I was comfortable with it, while during the when you're preparing for the test, guys, as a student, if you can identify as a candidate that, let's say for example, critical reasoning and reading comprehension, let's take these two only, are your strengths, then you need to identify how many, what kind of accuracy will you be able to get in it. Okay, how much time would you take to solve such questions? um, these things, if you can identify accuracy in your time, and in fact even if you can improve it, then what that does is, if there's a particular section that, say for example, you're weak at, then you can save some time out from here and utilize that in the weak section. Because timing is one of the biggest problems that I've seen a lot of people face uh, in the verbal section. In fact, let me just ask you, how many of you out here, if you face timing issues in verbal, mark yes in the yes and no poll. How many of you face timing issues? Let's say, for example, by the time you are at your 26th question or 28th question, you realize, hey, I just have 5 minutes left or 7 minutes left on the clock. How many of you fall in that category? Okay, I can see almost all of you are saying yes. Okay, so this is something which, as I said, I know that it happens. Every time you're taking a verbal section, you might end up taking, say, 6 minutes to read an RC passage, or you might end up, taking too much time in a sentence correction question, and then realizing, hey, I do not have time. That is a very common problem. So the first learning or the first strategy that you have to keep in mind is identify which sections are you pretty comfortable with. Now, it is quite possible that you could be comfortable with all three. I'm not saying that you have to be good at two only. If you're comfortable at all three, obviously you can push your score to a 42 for also if you want to, or a 43 or 45, whatever you want. Uh, but let's just say you're facing issues in the verbal section and you want to create a strategy which is optimal enough for you to get a 40, 41. Then in that case, you can try and figure out which two sections are the ones that you would want to focus more on, which you're pretty sure that you'll be able to do well in. Okay. Now, and understand that as I told you now, that say for me, critical reasoning was pretty strong. So I knew that I would be able to solve any critical reasoning question in 2 minutes. Also, when you're doing questions, guys, what I would recommend out here, the biggest strategy that I would recommend is, uh, you would be practicing, right? Once you learn the concept, you practice a lot, right? So when you're practicing, try and figure out, say, for example, how much time do you take to solve a question if you've understood the stimulus well? Okay. How much time do you roughly take to solve a, say, a 500 to 600 level question? How much time do you take to solve a 600 to 700 level question? How much time do you take to solve a 700 plus level question? Try and identify these a little bit. Do a little bit of deep dive here, because if you want to create a strategy, you would really need to know how much time do you really take to solve a question. In fact, are there any weak areas? Are there any topics that you're not comfortable with in your CR? Could be a strength, but maybe you might not be good at, say, bold-faced questions or evaluate questions. Okay, so identify those really well. Why I'm telling you this? See, based on my personal experience, what I have realized through practice and everything, that if, say, for example, if there's a stimulus which I don't understand, or let's just say even if I understand, but I'm not sure what the conclusion is, or I'm not sure what I'm trying to do out here in the, as far as, let's say, evaluate question, I don't know what I'm trying to evaluate. I'm sure some of you might have faced that issue. I know that if I face such kind of a problem, there is almost a 90% probability that I would get that question wrong. There's a very, very high chance that I'll get it wrong. Okay. How do I know that? I know that because I have done a lot of questions, of CR questions. I've done enough practice. I've collected enough data to analyze and understand what works for me and what doesn't. So if in the exam, say for example, if I come across a question and I was pretty sure when I went to the exam, it was pretty clear to me. Remember the first strategy that I talked about, skipping. So it was very clear to me that if I read a stimulus, if I'll try and understand it, if I understand it well, if there's no issues with it, it is pretty clear to me what I need to do about it, then in that case, I would solve the question, the way I usually do it. But if I don't understand, then I'm going to leave that question. I'm going to take the best calculated guess that I can based on my basic understanding, mark something and move on. I'm not gonna waste 2 minutes or 3 minutes out there trying to force myself to understand it, because in verbal, obviously there's a time constraint, right? You just have 1 minute 50 seconds on an average to solve a question. So if I end up spending 3 to 4 minutes in a question, where I initially I have understood in the first 1.5 minutes that I haven't understood anything in that stimulus, I would be wasting my time giving more time to it. Okay, so this is one thing that I would want you to kind of, this is something personal for everyone again, but this is something which I would want you to figure out, because the art of skipping or art of leaving, whatever you want to call it, is also very, very important. You need to understand when do you leave a question. Also, why do I want you to collect this data? See, in the exam, there's a good chance that you might panic, right, when you're doing questions. But data helps you validate whether you're good enough or not. Let's just say if I know if in a medium question, easy to medium question, I have a 90% accuracy, in this I have an 80%, and let's just say here I have a 55 to 60% accuracy. Okay, so I've known historically I'm good at CR. That this data has validated it. Obviously, there should be slightly higher if you're looking at a 42, 43. But if the data validates it that you're good at it, then I would strongly, urge you to build that mindset, in your mind every time when there's a self-doubt that I might not be doing well, by saying, okay, I have done enough questions. Even when at times when I had self-doubt, I was able to do well in it. Let me know, just go and continue and start solving questions. So skipping is something that you have to understand when you should do it. Okay, very, very important. When do you skip a question? And if I've taken CR as an example, you could obviously take a SC, RC, everything works in the same way. Understanding when do you leave a question. Also understand your timing. See, if for example, you come up and say, Sakib, I'm able to do a 500 to 600 level question in 2 minutes. Okay, and I'm able to do a 600 to 700 in 2.5. and let's just say a 700 plus level question in say 3.5 minutes. Now this might not be good. This shows that you are able to solve a question well when given the time, but you don't have that much time. If you're doing an easy medium question, then ideally the time should be somewhere around 1.5 minutes. If you're doing a medium question, let's say medium hard question, in those cases you can still spend 2 minutes. Okay. If you're doing a hard question, then maybe you can go to 2.5 to 3 minutes, but that's about it. Okay. And again, this is an exception. In 1 or 2 questions, you can do that, just telling you. And this is for CR, by the way. For SC, again, things will tweak. But what is the takeaway that what's the takeaway out here? The takeaway is that on an average, your time should be 2 minutes. But for easy, medium, hard, the timing is different. So it is very important for you to understand that in all these three, are you taking different times or not? If you're not, and if your time is a little higher in the easy questions also, then that means there's still some work to be done to improve that timing. That means you're not ready to take the mock or the test. Okay, I hope you understand that part. Also, as far as panning is concerned, just to let you know from my personal experience, I had a technical glitch in my exam. Literally, the screen kind of got blank. In fact, it happened for everybody. But again, I did not panic. Now, obviously, it's an exam which might be really important. You might say, Saqib, you're just giving for the sake of it. But I used that extra 10, 15 seconds that was there to think about the CR question which I was doing. Okay, I was like, okay, they will come and they'll fix it, right? Why should I worry about it? Let me just think about the question that I was doing. So it is important for you to not, panic unnecessarily, and to develop that, ability to not panic would always come from, as I said, from the data part, and also realizing when to skip and when not to skip. Okay. Also, just keep in mind that most of the question that I got was from the assumption family. So strengthen, weaken, evaluate, assumption. Please make sure that you do these really well, because if you're getting 7 to 8 questions, then if 7 or 6 of them from here, even if you don't like boldface, don't like flaw, ideally if you're getting a boldface, you should be able to do. Usually you get it in the 3rd and 4th quarter, but even if you do 7 of them properly, that's good enough for you. Okay. I can see some questions in the chat box. I'll quickly take them up. Sometimes won't be able to understand question. In that case, what can we do? Ansha, I've answered that question. There's some question which you're not able to decide between 2 choices. Okay. Answer the first RC question. Could you tell? Aparajita, I have that in my RC section. I'm going to talk about it. Don't worry. See, if you're stuck, Prasad, if you're stuck between 2 choices, it's a very common problem. It happens in SCCR, RC, everywhere, right? For all 3 of them, I have slightly different strategies. So, for example, I know people, when they're doing CR question, when they're stuck between 2 options, they keep on rereading the 2 options. That I should not say that's not going to help. There are 2 things that you can do that can be much more effective. Number 1 is, see if you have missed some keywords in the options. Okay. When I say keywords, what do I mean by that? Is extreme words like this is definitely going to happen. This is the most important thing. This is those kind of small extreme words or quantifiers that can help you figure out whether this answer is still possible or not. Okay. Sometimes extreme answers, in some cases, I'm not saying every time, are the incorrect answer choices, right? So when you're reading all the 5 options, sometimes you miss out these things because you're reading very quickly. So if you're stuck between 2 answer choices, do look at certain keywords which might have missed in the first round. Second thing is, go back to the stimulus. There's no harm in doing that. What I usually do is I usually go back, okay, and I look at the stimulus once again, and if I have 2 options, I go and sometimes put it there and see, okay, this was the conclusion, which one is falls more within the scope, or which one is impacting the conclusion more. Instead of reading the 2 options again and again and then trying to figure out what to do, it is best to go back to the stimulus and look at it. In SC questions, if I'm stuck between 2 of them and I really need to figure out what I need to do, then I try and see okay, is there an error? Did I miss? What is the main key differences between the 2 options which I have missed? So sometimes looking at what is different in these 2 options sometimes triggers, okay, I did miss a pronoun out here. The pronoun noun SV noun pronoun pair is different in both of them. So I'll have to kind of focus on that and then try to mark an answer. Okay, instead of again looking at other options which I would not want to do. Same goes for RC. I know some people have this notion that you should read an RC only once really well and never go back. Obviously, you should read your RC properly. There's no doubt about it. But going back to certain portions of the RC is not a problem, as long as you're just going to validate it. So ideally, you should know where you need to go in the reading comprehension. you should not go back and reread everything while I answering the question. Okay, so read once properly. But if you're stuck between two options in reading comprehension, you can go back to the to that particular passage or that line and then try and see which one makes more sense. Okay, I hope that answers your query, Prasad. Now, there's one thing which I want to cater out here is regarding CR. Sometimes it happens that people exhaust almost all the CR questions and then come up and ask me OG questions and hey, should I solve LSAT CRs? The answer is no. Please don't solve LSAT CRs. I've never done any LSAT in my life. Not required at all. I know a lot of students who have scored 750, never touched even a single LSAT question. If you are being forced to look at LSAT questions, then that means that you're doing something really wrong in the way you're solving CR questions. Okay, so the main thing that you need to keep in mind is that there are a lot of questions, official questions, which are available. Obviously, if you're a GMATWhiz student, there's still 100 plus questions in the course itself. You have questions in the platform, which itself covers 300 questions. But let's just, if you're looking at official resources, also there are 2 official resources, which combine itself give you about 600, 800 questions out here. Okay, and I haven't even counted here verbal review. If I count verbal review, this itself would go around, this itself would touch around 1,000 questions easily. So don't you don't have to, and again, just to be very honest here, never had to do all of it. Okay, there are 1,000 plus GMAT style questions already available. If you are going beyond this, stop, go back, fix your process first. Okay, because there's something wrong with the process. You're not following the right way of solving questions. You're not learning from your mistakes. So go back and see what kind of mistakes you're making, fix them, then maybe repeat a few more questions, look at other verbal review and those kind of resources, but try and avoid LSATs. Okay, even LSAT RCs won't be needed unless and until you have run out of RC passages, which again is a problem. Please keep in mind, even for RCs, there would be around 600 to 700 questions, just official ones. There are there. So if you just need passages to read and comprehend, if you want to improve your reading comprehension skill, because I know there are, in a lot of cases, people don't read a lot generally, and when they start doing reading comprehension questions, they face a lot of problem, in improving the timing and those kind of things. So for that purpose, you can maybe read it, but for solving proper RC questions, I would not recommend it. Okay. Now, RC is one area which I know everybody faces a problem, especially in the last quarter, because by the time you are in the last 9 questions, you hardly have 9 minutes or something like that left, 9 to 10 minutes. So what do you really do? See, understand, based on my observation, and again, talking to students, what I've realized is that out of the 4 RCs, usually 2 of them would be around 300 words, not more than that. So like 2 paragraphs or something like that, 150 words each. You would definitely get one passage which would be huge. Okay, I know I've written 2 here, but out of those 2 also kind of break it into this way. One of them would be a kind of a medium one, and one of them actually is going to be a long one. And when I say long, it's like a 4 paragraph RCs, which I got in the third quarter, and based on my observations, I've seen a lot of people end up getting this in the third quarter only. This will especially happen if you're doing well in your verbal section. If your graph is going up in terms of difficulty level, then there's a good chance that you will get a long passage or a difficult one in the third quarter. In my case, I did not get any business passages. Okay, but a lot of humanity passages or social science passages would definitely be there. So I think somebody asked me about the average time to answer first RC question. See, it depends on the length. Okay, so the way I kind of look at it is that if you are reading, say, for example, it depends, actually, it depends on 2 things, my bad. It depends on the length. It depends on, in fact, 3 things. It depends on the difficulty level, the density of the passage, and obviously the comfort level also. Like, for example, if I'm reading a science passage or a business passage, I can kind of read it very quickly. Okay, even if it's a little difficult, my pace would still be a little faster than other passages. But if I'm reading a humanities or a social science or something like that kind of a passage, or maybe a geography also is something which I don't like, then if it's dense, it's gonna take me time. If it is an easy one, then relatively I'll still take a little more time. But however, in general, see, if you're doing a short passage, you should be able to solve roughly the first question within the first 4 to 5 minutes. Kind of think of it in this way, that you should be able to read the passage in 3 minutes and solve the first question in 1.5 minutes, something like that. It should not go beyond that. Like, again, the worst case. because short passages you can understand that you have to do it in 6 to 7 minutes. A medium passage ideally in 7 minutes to 8. If it's a long passage, then it is okay to be anywhere between 7 to 9. I'm writing 7 to 9 because again it depends on your comfort level. So it could be a lengthy passage, but that's something that you might be pretty comfortable reading. So you might be able to read it very quickly. Maybe read it that also in 3.5 minutes and solve questions very quickly. Or even if you take 4 minutes to read it, then maybe you can solve each questions in a minute. So you might be able to complete that in 8 minutes also. Okay, so if you so the strategy out here, guys, would be to not give equal amount of time for each passage. Don't think, oh, I have 7 minutes per passage, so let me take my own sweet time to do it. No, if it's a short passage, if you're comfortable with it, read it. I sometimes vary my pace in the passage also. Again, this is a personal preference. I'm not recommending it, but there are sentences. Some people think that I have to read slowly each and every line, and yes, you have to read every line, but the word slowly is wrong. The word here is that you should read at a pace that you're comfortable with. If the comfortable pace is fast, go fast. Okay, if the pace is, if there's something which is dense, you might take time to understand, take your time to understand. But if you're not being able to understand at all, take a call whether you really want to do that passage or not. Ideally, it is not recommended to leave any passage except the last one, just in case if you don't have time. But even then, I would still recommend doing passages because there are 13 to 14 questions here, huge weightage. If you ace your RCs, you'll be able to do well. Like in the third quarter, when I got my RC, it was, as I said, it was a lengthy one. So I first of all started reading it to understand, whether I'll be able to understand it also or not. I realized, okay, I was understanding. It's not a problem. It's something that I can comprehend. It's not too dense. So I gave time to that passage. I gave time to that passage because I knew that I am getting difficult questions. If I can ace these questions, I would be able to score really well. In fact, my third quarter, which is like the 9 questions, my third quarter was perfect. No mistakes in my third quarter. I made 1 or 2 mistakes in the first 2 quarters, but in the third quarter was perfectly fine, which kind of helped me push my score to a 40. So I'm not saying that you have to, again, don't generalize it, but I'm just the point that I'm trying to make here is that you you can take these timelines as benchmarks, but also keep in mind that the comfort level would play a huge role. So vary your pace. Don't keep a single timeline in mind that, okay, I'll just be taking this amount of time to do it. But skipping is very important. Now, I know Dipanshu was asking me, can we skip questions? So guys, when I say skip, keep in mind, by skip, I mean you mark something and move on. You can never skip a question. Okay. That's not possible. So at least in the current format, you cannot do that. So basically, you just mark something, move on. So with the passage, if you really, really, really cannot understand even after giving 5 minutes of reading it, then move on. Move on, do something else, save your time. Okay. Also, if let's say RC is not your strength, this is another strategy that you can look at, is to keep in mind that at least keep, as I said, at least SC, if SC and CR is your strength, then you have to take a call. You have to ask yourself, what should I do in the last quarter? Should I do, if I get a passage, should I attempt that question, or should I, take my chances in the SC and CR questions because I know I'll be able to do well. So while building the strategy, when to skip, which 2 to 3 areas, which if all 3 of them are good, then well and good. But if there are only 2 sections, 2 subsections that you're good at, decide what you really want to do in the last quarter. Okay. So as far as RC is concerned, as far as timing is concerned, notice, as I said, that my RC and CR was something that I was comfortable with. So if you look at my timing, it's CR, I would still say I did not do that well. I should have, kind of stuck to 2 minutes. But again, there's a 7 second is not a lot. So I kind of took a minute extra here, I would say, in those 9 questions, not more than that. But I kind of managed that. I saved my time here. Now, remember that I was talking about short passages, right? My fourth quarter passage was small, was short, basically just 2 paragraphs, easy to read and very quick to solve. Okay, so and some of you might panic because of that, thinking that, hey, I'm getting an easy passage, so did I make a mistake in the third quarter or not? Because that panic might set in again. So here again, I would want to add one observation which I saw in the test, was that the GMAT does kind of averages out the difficulty level. So it might happen that question number, say for example 31, you could get a hard question, very hard question, but 32 might turn out to be a medium or a easy medium kind of a question. It's quite possible. And then they would average out the difficulty level. saying ki, hey, it was a, say for example, you got an easy question here, you got a hard question here, so the average difficulty level of this would become medium or medium hard, something like that. So don't panic if you see an easy question in between. It's quite possible that they might be just giving you because it could be experimental. It could be that they're just averaging out the difficulty level. There are multiple scenarios, multiple possibilities. So your job in the exam is not to think about these things. Also keep in mind, I did make one or two mistakes in the first two quarters. So I did not panic. See, I had a very clear-cut strategy. I want a 40 plus or a 40, so I can make 6 to 8 mistakes. Let's put it this way. So even if I got stuck in a question which I was sure which I will not be able to do it, I did not panic. I marked something and move on. That is where skipping comes into picture, because I know I can skip. Let me mark something and skip it and do something else. Okay, that would help you save time. And obviously, as I said, keep a very clear cut, while practicing, figure out what is the timing that would work for you. Again, for SC questions, it was very clear to me that if I'm doing an SC easy question, it doesn't take me a minute to do it, hardly a minute to solve an easy question. But when I'm doing a medium question, it would be somewhere between 1.5 to 1.75, depending on, the length and everything. Hard questions, again, it varies from 1.5 to 2.5. Depending on how much time do I have. If I have a lot of time, I do give that time to solve that particular question. Okay, but at any point of time, I ensured that I am not giving a lot of time to a particular question. It was pretty important for me to set timings that I'm comfortable with. See, so these are the timings that I was comfortable with. I knew, I checked it, I verified it through data. So I was pretty sure that I would not exceed these time. I had a decent amount of clarity, and mostly students do have this clarity. I tell them to have those who do well is that if I've read a stimulus, say for example, a SC question, say for example, the sentence, and if I'm trying to eliminate one or two options, how much time do I usually take doing that? So I have kind of figured out that it takes me somewhere around 1 minute to 1 minute 15 seconds to do it if it's a medium one. So after that, if I'm not able to solve it, if I'm stuck between two answer options, I have kind of developed that sense, and ideally you should also, that I might have spent 1.5 minutes already. So do I want to give another 30 seconds to take a shot at it, or do I want to skip it and move on? So that is something, while practicing, you should kind of develop that sense. Okay. In my test, I got a question like EDM is something, if you're unlucky, you might get a question which you might not know about. So once I got a question like that, which I was not very sure what to do with it. Now I know if I don't know it, I don't know it. It's not that some magically in my mind I'll get to know the usage of that idiom, right? So when I was stuck between a few answer options, I chose the one which I felt could be the correct one and moved on, because there's nothing else that I can do there. And there's no need for me to panic, because as I said, it was clear to me that I can make 6 to 8 mistakes. Okay. And wherever I required, I strategically guessed also, where I felt, okay, not very sure what to do. I was stuck between two answer options. I told you the strategy which I use, looking at the differences, trying to figure out the answer if I can. And if I can, then I would mark that and move on. So these strategies would help you save time. You would be able to solve these particular questions quickly and move on. But keep in mind, these are advanced strategies. These are things that you should try only when you have developed a sense of how much time do you take the question. You have kind of figured out which areas are your strengths. Okay. And say it is clear to you that you would be able to solve an easy question, medium question, hard question in different timing. If you are still taking solve a SC question 1.5 minute fully, or irrespective of the difficulty level, that means there's still some scope for you to improve. Okay, or maybe 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes to solve a hard question. Then you need to change. Okay, so just to summarize here is, as I said, I know the first point was people there do get anxiety and they worry about it. But as I said, if you know your strengths, if you know the strategy that you're planning to use, if you have a clear-cut understanding of the number of mistakes that you can make, then half of the tension goes from there only, because you can keep on reminding yourself, hey, I can make one mistake, I can make two mistakes. Oh, this is a question, essay question, which I knew that if something like this comes up, I would not be able to do it. So let me mark something and move on. Okay. So since I knew that is what works, I knew what question I needed to work on. So this I've already mentioned, right? 7 mistakes, out of which 3 I knew I couldn't get it right, so I skipped in SC. I was like, okay, let me mark something, let me move on. What may. That's not something that I'm going to worry about. Quant is something that I'm going to talk about next, so don't worry. So this is how much accuracy is required, something which I've already told you. Also keep in mind, I did not mention it, but there are 6 experimental questions also in the exam. Okay, so technically you are being tested on 30 questions. And in that 30, I'm saying you can still make 7 mistakes. You can understand that, right? I know you don't know where those 6 experimental questions are, but even this should give you some, hope, respite, whatever I want to call it, or it should ease your tension. That I'm not saying out of 36 questions get 7 wrong. Technically, there would be 6 experimental which would not come, which might, hardly have any effect on your score. So in 30, you can still make 7 mistakes. If you're targeting a 42 or something like that, you can make 6 mistakes or 5 mistakes, something like that, to get your score. Obviously, I'm adding this part, very, very important, that these mistakes should be spread apart as much as possible. Okay, if you make 2-3 mistakes in the first quarter, 2 mistakes in the second quarter, and then hope to get a 42, not going to happen. The score might be somewhere in between 40-41 only. Okay. Also, this is very important. I know since I've talked about guessing and skipping, some of you might want to guess right away. Please don't do that. What did I tell you? Read the question, read the essay, try to see what you can eliminate, try to see what you can, errors you can identify, boil down to 2 answer options or 3 answer options, whatever is a possibility, and then take a call. If you're still not being able to identify it, then take a calculated guess if you have to. Same goes for CR. Read the CR, understand the stimulus well. Okay, if you still feel, I'm not able to understand the stimulus at all, I have to guess something and move on, then do that. Don't just see, this question belongs to, say, a flaw question. I haven't done flaw, so let me just move on. Don't do that. That's a wrong strategy, please. Okay, because there's a possibility that you might have got the question that is in front of you might be very, very easy. So read it and then take a call. Okay, I've already told you, be aware of the strong and weak areas, and please, guys, quality over quantity, very, very important. Quality over quantity. Please don't think that you have to do a lot of questions to ace GMAT. GMAT, you don't need a lot. Okay, if you can focus, do, say, for example, 50 questions, 100 questions, and analyze them really, really well. Okay, like, so for example, if you're doing an assumption, do 20 to 30 questions of assumption, and then go through them really, really well to understand what is it that you're still missing out on. You might realize after doing 30 questions, hey, I'm pretty good with assumption questions. The only problem is that in hard questions, I take 3 minutes or 3.5 minutes. And if you really want to reduce that time, then you know that you only need to work on hard assumptions, nothing else. Rest of the stuff is good. So you can skip rest of the assumption part and then focus on that. That is what we call something like precision targeting kind of thing. Precisely figure out what is your weak areas and strong areas, and then you can work only on those areas. Okay, this is like the most important strategy, I would say. Save time on easy questions and devote additional time on hard ones. That's the best way. If you can do an easy SC question in a minute, you're saving that 30 seconds for a hard SC question. If you can complete an RC, easy RC, short RC in 6.5 minutes, then you're saving that additional 1.5 minute for another RC, which might be slightly difficult. So this strategy is like really important. Try to figure out your timing. Okay. And that's what I said. Even if I spend the time a little bit more in a few hard questions, I don't need to be worried about, because then I'll be able to do it, finish it easily. So that's about the verbal summary, guys. If you have any questions regarding verbal, please feel free to ask. Did this help you understand how do you need to create a strategy? If you have any questions on that, I hope it's clear how you can control your anxiety. I hope it's clear how you need to use your data. I hope it's clear, how you can save time also. What's the best way to save time? If you need more inputs, please feel free to ask. I'll be more than happy to answer. But in the meantime, I'm moving on to the next part, which is GMAT Quant. Now, I think I mentioned at the start of the webinar, right, that a lot of people were saying GMAT Quant has become very difficult. And I had taken the GMAT 5-6 years back, and that time I didn't feel that it was pretty difficult. At that time, so I was pretty curious to know that has it really become that difficult? People were ending up with a 49, especially people taking the test also, and scoring consistently in the marks 50. But in their test, some of them ended up with a 49, 48. So I just wanted to understand what's the problem with it. So first of all, just to answer your question, what I realized was that it hasn't become tough. There are certain questions which became tough, which I'm going to answer that. But what you need to understand is the 31 question that was given to me, at least what I've noticed was that there were 6 which were definitely about 6 were difficult. When I say difficult, I mean, let me use the word not difficult, I would say conceptual, or a better conceptual plus I would say fresh questions, never seen something like that before. And I had to kind of sit there and figure out what would be the approach of that particular question. Okay. In my case, I made just one mistake in the quant. Again, a very stupid mistake. I'm pretty pissed with myself, but that's fine. But here also the strategy that worked in my favor was that the times thing was easy, saving a lot of time in easy question, investing in hard. And I have a very detailed table and slide on this to answer your question, because in quant webinars, people keep on asking these questions. I just want to, kind of tackle this with the help of a table only. But just to keep in mind, out of 31 questions, there were only just 6 which were tough. You still have the opportunity to do 25 questions really, really well. And when I say well, these 25 questions are something that if you have covered the course properly, especially in our case, like I kind of remembered most of the questions that came in the exam. So I kind of sat, looked at the question, saw if whatever we have taught, does it cover almost everything or not? And it does, guys. So those of your GMATWhiz students out here, if you go through the course really, really well, the course with quizzes, these 25 questions would be a piece of cake, I'm telling you. There's nothing that you would need to worry about in these questions. Prasad is asking, will they give any paper or pen? They'll give you paper pen, don't worry, Prasad. You'll get all of that, as many as you want. Okay. So what I realized, so what I did was, as I told you, I remembered most of the questions. So I came down, looked at those questions, took some inputs, obviously internally, because we are not allowed to share those questions outside, to kind of understand, how many of these questions are actually tough or easy or medium. So the kind of split that we looked at was this: that about 19 questions were up to 650 level. When I say 650, I would say anywhere between 500 to 650. The initial 2 to 3 questions were very, 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 very easy, guys. Like just testing the concept, nothing else at all. So if you're making sure that you understand the basic concept of each and every chapter or topic, you are not going to face any problems at all. Okay. Okay, Ryan has a question. Out of the 31 questions, how many are experimental? There are 3 experimental in quant, by the way. Okay. In verbal, there are 6. In quant, there are 3. Okay. So 19 questions, roughly, in my opinion, were I would call easy and medium, between easy and medium. There were 6 questions which you can fall in the category of medium to hard. Okay, and these 6 questions were actually hard. There was no denying it, no scope of saying that it wasn't hard at all. So as you can see, 25 questions are mentioned. Ideally, in these questions, you should have 100% accuracy. There's no scope of making any mistake here, because they were almost testing your concept directly or whatever has been taught in the course, nothing else. The boosters practice, because if you have done well, these 19 would not be a problem. You will like fly through it easily. These 6, it's possible that you might end up making 1 or 2 mistakes, but here also I kind of expect you to get at least 4 correct, nothing less than that. About 67% accuracy is something they still expect out here, which you can see that you've already got 23 questions correct. And here it could be a 50% accuracy. You might get 3 of them correct, 3 of them you might not get correct. That's still possible. But all in all, nothing should stop you from getting 26 to 25 correct easily, which it in itself should be a Q50, because usually you can make 4 to 5 mistakes in the test. If you make 4 to 5 mistakes, then you can still end up with a Q50, if not a 51. Okay. And keep in mind, I had a perfect paper, just one mistake, almost perfect paper. So in my case, you can understand if they kept on increasing the difficulty level, right? If I'm getting 6, you in your case, even if you're targeting a 50, 51, I'm sure you might also end up getting somewhere around 6 to 7 only. So you're not getting a lot of hard questions. 6 is totally fine. As far as concepts are tested, guys, what I noticed, what they do test very good questions on percentages and PNL and ratio, especially questions which are combining both of them. You have to be very, very comfortable with variables. I know a lot of students who can solve questions when they're giving numbers, but I did get a few questions, especially in percentage, which was slightly calculation intensive. In fact, I've written it here. They were like slightly difficult numbers, like 190. Even this is not difficult, by the way, or something like that, and you're trying to figure out the fraction or percentage or something like that. Okay. So the point is that you might get certain calculation intensive questions like that, or you might get a variable based question also. Like, for example, you might be doing something like this in the exam, 1.8x plus 2.5, 2.5x or something. Obviously the variables would get cancelled out in some way or the other, but you might end up getting something like this, or maybe 2 fractions, 1.8x by 1.7 by 1.9x by 2.5, something like these. So obviously, when you have x, that means you have to take that variable x somewhere, right, to solve that particular question. So you have to be comfortable with variables. I'm reiterating it because I saw it a number of word problem questions where it was being used. In ratios, also some really good ratio questions were given. Some of them were like pretty easy. Direct testing questions were also there, just testing the concept. But there were one, two, the six out of the six that I'm talking about. There were one, two which were testing your good, uh, basically distribution based questions, where you have to distribute some numbers here and there based on the ratio given, which was slightly on the tougher side. What I noticed in number properties was that they give you a lot of inference based DS questions, you know, uh, where you might have to, let me give you a sample statement from the official guide only, where instead of asking is if a particular number is prime, they might ask you, does the number x have exactly two distinct positive factors? Now, so if I ask you, does x have exactly two distinct positive factors? I'm basically directly and indirectly asking you, is x prime or not, right? So what I noticed was that in factors, divisibility, especially DS-based questions, they were giving indirect statements or asking indirect questions where if you have decent amount of conceptual clarity, you would be able to figure out what they are asking. But if you don't know that, then you might end up spending a lot of time figuring out what you need to do. So here again, the skill of pre-analysis, which I've talked a lot about in a booster files, guys, is very, very important. It's like spending a minute or two just trying to understand what exactly are they asking, and then attacking the question. There were some very obvious steps because of that in the paper, in the test. Okay, but as I said, there were direct questions also, direct factors-based questions, very, very easy, without any problem, or remainder-based question, QD plus R based of questions, pretty easy that you would be able to solve without any problems. One thing which I want to really mention was that PNC probability, please don't leave this topic. I had a very, very easy probability question where if you just know, the concept of this PA plus PB is equal to 1, you would have been able to solve that particular question easily without any problems. Or if you know that, what are independent events, at least if you know the basic concept of that also, you would have been able to solve that question. I'm not saying that you cannot get difficult questions, you can, but there is a good chance that you might get some easy ones also, especially if you're targeting a Q50 or a Q51. Obviously for Q50, Q51, there's no scope of leaving anything, by the way. You have to go basic and advanced both. But even if you're looking at a Q48 or a Q47 to Q49, if you want to take advantage, make sure to get all easy questions correct, make sure that you go through the simple variations of it. Okay, there were some few inference-based difficult questions were also there. I'm not denying that fact, but as I mentioned, there were 25 questions which were based on the easy, medium, right, and they were directly from these topics without any issues. Now, 3 to 4 questions which I was talking about, which were tough, were basically purely logical questions, pure number distribution based questions. They might give you some equation, or you might have to translate and set up that equation and then distribute numbers between them to figure out to maximize or minimize a number or something of those sorts. Okay, and these are mostly variable based or inequality based questions. So those of you are not comfortable with inequalities, those of you are not comfortable with variables, definitely go through them really, really well to understand that. Again, having said that, as I said, you still have the option of making 3 to 4 mistakes to get a Q50. So if you're just targeting Q50, these are questions that even if you get 50% of them correct, you're fine. You're good. It's not a problem. But if you're looking at a perfect Q51, then you would have to do these kind of questions a little more, or develop a good understanding comfort with variables and inequalities. I focused on these 3 to 4 areas because I know that people end up underestimating these or not doing them really well. So the people just understand what is divisibility, but they don't go too deep into these topics, the conceptual part. So definitely do that. Okay. And obviously there were other questions from fractions, T and D functions. So in the exam, almost every topic was touched a little bit here and there. But these are ones that I definitely would want to mention. Now, as far as the strategy is concerned, guys, timing strategy, what I would want you to understand is, I said, right, in easy questions, medium questions, hard questions, what I've talked about in verbal, I would want to say the same thing here also. Please keep differential timing out here. I did mention, right, that there were about 19 questions which were between easy to medium, right? So I've kind of split that in this way, that there were 9 definitely very easy questions. Easy I'm going to show you some sample, not the exact questions, obviously, which I cannot do that, but I'll show you some sample and you can take a call whether they're easy or not. Some really easy questions where I definitely believe that you would be able to solve those questions in a minute without any problems. You should be able to do it, or maybe 1.2 minutes, nothing more than that. So this is one particular area that you can definitely save 9 minutes out here, okay, without any problems. Now, as far as medium questions is concerned, there were 16 questions which fall under medium questions, medium to hard. Okay. Now, what I've done is I've kind of assumed, let's say there are some medium to hard questions where you'll not be able to save any time at all. That's totally fine. Even in those 10, there are certain medium questions which will be fairly medium only, nothing else, which you should be able to do it in 1.5, 1.6 minutes. In those 10 questions also, you should be able to save 3 minutes. In fact, you could save 5, but I'm being conservative here, okay? I'm just saying you'll be able to save 12 minutes, 3 minutes here. So notice by the time you're done with 10 plus 6 plus 9, 25 questions, you've already saved 12 minutes. So this question which everybody asks, how do I do hard questions? For hard questions, I end up taking a lot of time. Notice for these hard questions, you have additional 12 minutes. So for this 6 questions, you have 12 minutes already, plus this extra 12 minutes. So you have a total of 24 minutes on your hand to do these 6 questions. It's like about 4 minutes per question, which, believe me guys, is a lot. Even if you don't save this time also, even if you save this 9 also, that still gives you 21 minutes. So you actually have 3 minutes, bare minimum 3 minutes per question to solve these hard ones. So you have to develop this mentality in quant if you want to, and obviously for verbal also. But I hope this table helps you understand that you don't have to force yourself to do hard questions in exactly 2 minutes, please. Especially the ones that you're seeing for the first time, you won't be able to. In fact, I had to do a question in the exam, and I believe I'm pretty decent in quant. It took me 3.5 minutes to do it, because I had to kind of figure out what do I do. Once it clicked, it was pretty easy to do it, but it took me some time. And which is okay. Why I was totally comfortable? Because in the initial first quarter, the questions was pretty easy. So like the first 7 to 8 questions, it hardly took me any time to do this, like 10 to 11 minutes, something like that, not more than that. So if you save time there, you would be able to solve these hard questions with the peace of mind without any problems. Okay, so keep this table in mind so that when you're doing your test, I know some people, when I tell them that the first 2 quarters of the exam is important, they end up giving unnecessary time to easy questions also, which is a wrong strategy. If a question requires a minute to do, give only a minute, not more than that. Okay. Again, if you have any questions here, guys, please feel to ask. This is one more aspect which I talked about in verbal, but I want to reiterate here. In my test, around the second, third quarter, I ended up getting a very easy question. And there are certain samples here. Okay, you can look at these samples. Like, look at this question. Tell me, do you think this question is tough? If you can take a minute if you want to. I'll just add a yes and no poll here. Take a minute, read it. If you want, you can solve it also, not a problem. But tell me, is it difficult? If you think it's difficult, say yes, else say no. It's not right. I can see most of you are saying no, which is, so you are agreeing with the fact that this is nothing. You literally don't have to do anything. Even if you don't know, that there are 2 solutions here, x equal to 0, x equal to minus half, x equal to minus half, x equal to 3/2, and the common solution is minus. Even if you don't know that, you can literally plug in the solution and get the answer. I'm just saying worst case. But this is not tough from any angle. It's not tough, right? Even this is a pie chart, the Venn diagram question, which is not tough. Total 5,000 students. X take music, Y take art, Z take both. This is Z. Okay, and this whole thing is X, this whole thing is Y. I need to figure out this. Now, if you haven't studied this, obviously you'll find the stuff. You'll say, hey, Saqib, I don't know how to solve Venn diagrams. I can understand. You don't know how to solve Venn diagram. But those of you who have studied Venn diagrams, you would know that this is not a difficult question at all. All you need to do is from 5,000, subtract X, subtract Y. You have subtracted Z twice, so just add it once, and you have your answer. Okay. If this seems difficult, then that means you need to work on your basics. You have to go through the basics of each topic, because these are easy questions. Here also think about it. Which of them is closest to half? 0.5. and there are fractions given, simple fractions. And we have already told you in the in the course in fractional decimals that you should know how much is 1 by 7, how much is 1 by 9, how much is 1 by 11, how much is 1 by 13, how much is 1 by 6. If you know that, you'll be able to. This will still take some time. I'm not saying it won't, to figure it out, but it's still easy. You don't have to do a lot out here. Direct questions, and you're getting it in the middle of the test. So you might be a little worried, hey, why am I getting such simple numbers? Am I making a mistake? No, you're not. So I can see about 20% of you are saying that this is tough. So again, guys, if you're saying that this is tough, I would really highly recommend that you go through the basics. Okay. But my point is that it is quite possible that during the test that you might get somewhere in between easy questions. That is just GMAT trying to uh, balance out the difficulty level, nothing else. So they might give you a super difficult hard question, then slip in an easy one. It could be an experimental also. As I said, there are 3 experimental questions also. So don't get too worried or worked up that you are not doing well. Okay. So in my case, again, this was just one mistake. And notice that difficulty level will keep on going up. The one that I made a mistake was somewhere here, very close to very high. But notice most of the question fell, in the category of medium high, I would say. Only a few questions which were tough out here. Notice the difficulty level, in fact, decreased also. So if I would have been worried out here that, hey, why is the difficulty level decreasing? Then I might have, because of anxiety, I might end up doing bad in the exam. So again, one thing, if you know these kind of information in the exam, you at least will help you not to panic. Okay, and also I've seen, personally, I'm telling you, last year that has happened, that a student messed up a particular section. So the student thought that they were not doing well in verbal. So that student ended up messing up quant, thinking that the verbal was screwed up. And when the final result came in, that student had actually done well in verbal. Okay, so the main, learning takeaway is you don't know until you see your score on the score, final score. So don't judge a lot, or don't think a lot about it. Just give your best for each and every question, and then see what is the result. Shashank is asking, in your case, were there more than one question easy towards the end? Shashank, there were quite a few questions, as I said, which were easy. Like I got 4 to 5 in the first quarter, and I told you there were 9 questions which were easy. So you can understand, I ended up getting a few easy here, a few easy here, a few easy here. When I say easy and medium, let me call it that way. You don't even expect a lot of medium questions also, right? In the second, third, fourth quarter, you usually expect most of the question to fall in the medium hard category, which wasn't the case if you notice out here. It dropped. And then it again went up, but it did not go in, it did not touch the ceiling also. So long story short, you can get easy questions. No need to worry about it. Now, remember, in case of verbal, I mentioned that OG, do the official questions, do GMATPREP questions. That should be more than enough. Now, as far as quant is concerned, guys, see, it depends what you're targeting, by the way. If your target score is somewhere between, if you're targeting just, say, 45, 46, something like that, then maybe OG, quant review, a little bit of GMATPREP, maybe a little bit, might be enough. You might not need anything else. Even just going through the GMATWhiz course would be enough for you to score. Or GMATWhiz and OG would be enough for you to score this. But if you're looking at a Q48 plus, okay, then OG is not enough. It doesn't have enough variety of questions. That's for sure. Okay, so okay, Dhruv is asking, can we allot timing per session in verbal? That's a good question, Dhruv. I'll take it up after completing this. Don't worry. Okay, that's a good question. So as I was saying, that OG would not be enough in quant. Okay, so in case of quant, I would definitely recommend doing more hard questions, especially if you're a GMAT student, do the quiz questions properly. Yeah, a lot of questions in the boosters and the practice quiz have been inspired from GMATPREP, GMAT, not OG, from GMATPREP and GMATPREP tests and all. So definitely go through those questions really well. Official questions should be used to validate if your concept is good or not, but that's only for validation, nothing else. GMATPREP questions would be good. If you need more practice, you can look at GMAT club tests also. I don't have a problem with that. GMAT club contest. If you really want to, if you're targeting Q50, Q51, you want to do more hard questions, and if you've exhausted all of these resources, everything, then GMAT club test would be something that you can definitely look at. But again, after doing 3,000 questions, 2,000 questions, if you're still facing a problem, then that means there's a problem. When I say problem, I mean facing problem in a lot of topics. If you're facing that, then you're not doing something properly. You'll have to kind of fix it. Okay. So, as far as this is concerned, quant is concerned, just to summarize, make sure that your easy, medium timing and hard timing is different. Again, validate it through practice. Okay, you would have about 24 to 25 questions which would fall under easy, medium category, a little bit of medium hard category. Try to get these correct. Even if you get all of these correct, or out of 25 you can get 23 correct, then you just need to get out of those 6 questions 2 to 3 correct only. Even with 2 correct, you might end up getting a Q49 easily. So what are you, based on what you want to target, decide how many incorrect can you make, because that again will ease a lot of pressure in the exam. Like, I know somebody who came up and told me in the third question turned out to be a coordinate question. I didn't know how to do it, so I panicked. Don't do that. In the first quarter, you can, if you're targeting Q48, 49, let's say for example, and for Q48, 49, you can make about 6 mistakes, or 7 also in some cases. So you have the option of making 6 mistakes. So even if you make one coordinate question mistake here, that's not going to affect your score. Okay, that's not going to affect your score at all. You still have 5 more mistakes to make. So why be worried if you made the third question wrong? That's fine. Try to get as many questions correct as possible. And if you're targeting a Q50, Q51, then obviously try to limit your mistakes to 4. 4 would definitely help you get a 50. For a Q51, guys, I'll be very frank upfront out here, either 0 mistakes or 1 mistakes. That's all mistake. Anything above that, you would end up with a 50. Like in the last 3 years, I've just seen one ESR where somebody got a Q50 with 2 mistakes. And those 2 mistakes were very far apart. Maybe that might have helped get that person a Q51. But in almost 90% of the cases, 99% of the cases, I've seen people getting a Q51 only with a with a perfect quant or 1 mistake, nothing like that. Okay. Karina, these sessions usually do get uploaded on YouTube, so you would be able to find these sessions out there. Okay, so that's it from my end, guys. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I know there's one question which I haven't touched upon. I would do that. But apart from that, if there's anything else that you want to ask, please feel free to ask. I know those. Just give me one sec, guys. Where is it? I'll bring the summary once again. And by the way, if you want to discuss more about it, about your preparation, if you are starting your prep, I know some of you are saying that you're starting your prep. If you want to know how we can help you out, because as you can see, we do keep on taking these tests, right? So we know what might help, what is the best way to prepare for it. So I'm sharing my Calendly link. If you want, you can book a call with us and we can tell you how we can help you out. Okay. Now, as far as the question regarding, so this is already something which I'm bringing the summary once again. If you have any questions regarding this summary, please feel free to ask. Now, as far as verbal timing is concerned, there's no harm in breaking down the timing, okay, per quarter. I hope that was your question, right? Please let me know, Dhruv, if you are asking that. When you say, can we allot timing per session? When you say session, do you mean quarter? Is that what you are asking, Dhruv? Okay, what's the best way to improve verbal score quickly? Okay, I'll I'll ignore the word quickly for a moment. Okay, because I don't know your starting level of your prep. But as far as if you want to improve your verbal score, then as simple as that, what you need to understand is the 3 strategies that I mentioned in the starting. Look at the first thing. You'll have to have this in place. Again, you might seem very obvious, but you have to first of all ask yourself, how comfortable are you with SC? Do you know the best ways to solve? Do you know meaning analysis? Do you know all the rules most of the rules that are needed? How good are you with reading? Are you comfortable with reading? Do you take a lot of time to read? Do you need to improve your reading skills? Is that something that you have to work on? And obviously certain nuances of CI and RC is something that you'll have to definitely make sure. Second, just to add out here is to figure out your strength and weaknesses, which I've already mentioned here. Are you good in all three of them? Or are you good in two of them? How much time do you take to solve a question? So if you want to improve, the first step would be this, fixing the concept. Once this is fixed, the second thing that you'll have to improve is your timing and slash accuracy. Which areas is accuracy bad or not that great, you need to improve on. Okay, if there's any specific thing that you're looking at, you need me to answer, please let me know when you're asking me what's the best way to improve. Samuel asked, Samuel, I'll take your question. Let me just very quickly answer Dhruv's question. So Dhruv, see, understand when you're looking at quarters, there is a small problem, by the way, because I hope you understand that you don't know where your RC would come up. Okay, so having a very stringent strategy would be difficult. Okay, we do recommend certain timing. Like for example, when you're doing the first quarter, ideally take 1.5 minutes. When you're doing the second quarter, you can go up to 2 minutes if you want to. When you're going to the third quarter, you can go to 2.1, 2.2 minutes, and the last quarter, whatever is the remaining time, you can take it. Right. So this is something that we do talk about, by the way. But keep in mind that you will have to be a little flexible, because it is quite possible that your RC might come somewhere at the end of quarter one, at the starting of quarter two, or you might start off with RC only and then your second RC might come up really immediately somewhere. So that might mess up your time a little bit. Okay, so the way I usually look at it, Dhruv, is I know that, and this is again my personal way of looking at it, is that whenever I used to complete a particular quarter, like say for example, when I'm done, once I'm done with 9 questions, and I know 27 is still, I still need to complete 27. What I usually looked at the clock was, do I have somewhere around 50, just the double time or somewhere close to that or not? Again, that's the way I used to look at it. Okay, you can use the same strategy because that's a simple way to calculate it. So for example, on your clock, ideally after the first quarter, you should have slightly more than 54. If you have slightly more than 54, then you're going well. After the second quarter, 18 questions are done. Do you have somewhere close to 36 minutes or not? So if you have somewhere between 34 to 36, you are going well. That's not a problem. You can still continue with the same pace. So this is a simplified strategy that you can use, because that makes life easy, because on average that is the amount of time that you have. But if you want a strategy which is a per quarter strategy, if you still want to build it, then this is roughly what we look at if you want to follow it. Okay. Regarding GMATWhiz tutor prep, how is the availability of the instructors? The instructors are usually available. Okay, so it's not that we end up taking a lot of students. GMAT tutor prep is something which is we only take up when there is an availability of tutor, otherwise we don't. So don't worry about availability. You can, I've given the calendar link, book a call, let us understand your requirements, and then, based on that, we'll let you know which tutor would be best for you, and we can work out the timing also, Samuel. So that's definitely not going to be a problem. Okay. How many hours of prep per day is needed to score above 600 plus? Okay, so 600 plus hours per day, again, then you have to understand that it varies from person to person, right? If your target is somewhere between 600 to 650 only, and and where are you starting from, that is also important. So if you're starting from say 500, 400, say for example, then you might need a little bit more time to prepare. If you're starting from 550 and you want to go to 650, then the amount of time needed would be less. But usually anywhere between, so I don't want to give this number, but I'm letting you know that on an average, most of the people spend around 15 to 20 hours on their prep. Okay, so if you're just targeting 600, 650, then that should be enough. And if you're targeting less, then obviously the time taken to reach that number would be slightly more. I'm giving a weekly time, per day time I'm not giving, because it varies. Again, some people work, so they give more time over the weekends and less over the weekdays. So as far as so this is another good question, that SC takes longer when I go through the meaning-based solving approach. Should I selectively use this strategy? So the answer is no. Okay. See, understand, whenever you're learning a new strategy, it will take time. I'm sure when you started learning multiplication, it must have taken you a lot of time, right? When you started learning to ride a bike or a car, it must have taken you a lot of time to do it. But after that, it becomes intuitive. So you have to force yourself to use that a little bit more. What did I tell you? When you're starting your prep, it is quite possible when you're doing your practice, you'll realize that in SC, for example, you might be taking for medium or hard questions, say 2.5 minutes or 2 minutes. That is totally fine. you have to keep on applying the process again and again and again till the point that you become comfortable with it. Yes, there could be certain questions where you might not be able to apply it, which is fine, but that should be an exception, not a strategy. Okay, the strategy should not be that I'm not be able to apply meaning-based approach, so let me go and do something else. No, a strategy could be that I've tried meaning-based approach, I tried to understand the meaning, I'm not being able to understand anything. So, okay, let me see if I can find anything. That I is fine, but that's an exception, maybe in one question. Okay. Also, in difficult questions, hard questions, if you start doing a lot of questions, you realize that there are sometimes two options which would be 100% grammatically correct, no mistake at all. The only difference in those two sentences would be just the meaning. One of them would have a very weird or incorrect meaning, or not the meaning that we're looking for. So if you skip or selectively use this strategy, then there's a very, very high chance that in high questions or difficult questions, you will get stuck between two answer options and not being able to do it. Okay. And I did my exam score a 620. How can I reach V40? Feel like verbal section is a nightmare. How can I reach V40? Something I have just talked about. See, I have to understand what kind of problems are you facing, right? Which are the areas that you're struggling with? How much are you struggling with? What kind of accuracy do you have? And then I will be in a better position to give you a strategy which might work for you to get a V40. I'm telling you, see, if I can reach, anybody can, because as I told you, I don't like verbal. I'll be very upfront here in the webinar. It's something that I had to do it to improve, so I did it. So if you want to know more, what can be done, I would say just let's connect once and then talk about it, so that I can understand in that V40 what's the split, and then tell you what can you do and how much, because there are other factors also. I need to know how much time do you have and all those stuff. How to gauge accuracy? Uh, so uh, so as far as gauging accuracy is concerned, it depends on your target score. Okay, let me add that. So for example, if you are, let's put it this way, that if you're targeting again a V40, then while doing questions, easy questions, you need to see whether you can hit a 90% accuracy or not. When you're doing a medium question, can you hit somewhere between 75 to 80% accuracy or not? When you're doing hard questions, can you hit an accuracy of say 55 to 60% or not? So these are certain benchmarks that you can keep for yourself. If you're targeting less than that, if you're targeting say V36, then obviously these percentages would reduce. You might not need to get so many hard questions correct. You might just be okay with a 45%. You might just be okay with a 75%. This is something which the mentor tells you. At GMATWhiz, you can talk to a mentor and they'll let you know based on your target score what kind of accuracy you need to target. Okay, so if you are not sure how to gauge your accuracy, just talk to the mentor and they will figure it out for you. Because this is pretty fluid dynamic for each and every person. It's totally different. But the numbers that are giving you a ballpark, if you just want to take a ballpark number, these should be fine. What to do if you're not able to understand the intended meaning from the option A? Shashank, as I just mentioned, for just a while back, it is possible that in a question, a particular question, maybe out of one or out of 10, one or two questions you might not be able to understand, which is okay. Out of 10, if it happens in one or two, that is totally fine. Then you to look at errors. What errors can you identify in that sentence, and then from there move ahead and try and eliminate answer options. But it's an exception, not the norm. Okay, so you have to just keep that in mind. If it's happening with you in say out of 8 of 10 questions, then there's a problem. Then you're not following the approach properly. Then you're not actually pushing yourself to understand the intended meaning. Okay, so try and see in how many questions is this happening to you. I hope that answers your query. Any other question, guys? Again, just to summarize, guys, those if you're struggling with verbal, and if you're still not able to figure out your strengths and weaknesses, book a call and just share your data with us. Let's have a look at it. Let me have a look at it. Let me try and figure out, why exactly is the problem? Why are you struggling with it? Because a good part about GMAT is that question types, varieties, the content is pretty limited, pretty focused. If you can understand those really well, I don't see any reason for you not being able to do well in it. Okay, it's quite possible that you might not be really good at all three sections, but we can figure out which ones are you good at and how we can maximize your score. There could be various strategies that we can create for you. There's no just the ones that I mentioned here is just some strategies which are the best practices. But uh, just to add here that it is quite possible that based on your target score, your requirement, and your ability or skill level, you might have to tweak it a little bit. So either talk to me, talk to Piyush, talk to and talk to your mentor if you're a GMATWhiz student, and then they will help you figure out what would work for you. But you have to listen. That's all. As long as you listen to us, you can definitely end up getting a 740, 750 easily, even a 760. Okay. Okay, I don't see any questions in the chat box. I'm ending the webinar now, guys. If you have any questions, you can see the email ID on the screen. Please feel free to write to us. The phone number is also there. And I've already shared the calendar link, so feel free to book a call, guys. Okay. Have a great day. Bye. I just answered Shashank's question, which is regarding not able to understand, and which is it is possible that you might not understand it. Okay. As I said, it is possible that in such cases, but it should be rare. Okay. It's not that out of 10 questions in 7 to 8 questions, you're not able to understand the intended meaning. If that is the case, then there's some problem with the comprehension skills. Okay. Then you have to work on your comprehension. You don't have to work on sentence correction. See, there's a difference between these two. If it happens in 1 or 2 questions, then that's fine. It can happen. In those cases, we use our SC skills, which is grammatical skills, to kind of figure out what the error could be and then start eliminating options from there. Okay. So just to summarize, out of 10, if it happens in 1 or 2 questions, no problem. Use the grammar skill and do it. Number 2, if it happens a lot, then obviously you need to work on a comprehension skill. 3, if it's a test taking environment, obviously in a test taking environment, if you're not able to figure out the meaning, if you're not able to figure out any error at all, okay, error at all, then in that case, obviously you can guess and move on. But that is from the exam taking perspective. If you're just talking while you're practicing and in general, then ideally you should follow strategy 1 and 2, figure out the meaning analysis or figure out the error, either of these two things. First should be the meaning analysis, obviously. Okay. You're welcome. Chalo guys, have a great day. I'm ending the webinar now. Bye.